Okay, so yes, this is great. This is Eric's slide as well. So these are the educational themes for you this semester. I believe our guest last week, Richard Louie, spoke on the blue column and what he considers 6 factors for entrepreneurial success. The yellow column is what the CFE has identified as constructs or behaviors of entrepreneurship. And yeah, we're going to link everything to and Richard talked on this a little bit last week about the Industry Transformation 4.0. This week, our guest is going to talk to us about creating your own luck and experimentation. We are pleased to announce Ben Chehebar. He is the VP of Hardware at Roadrunner Recycling, a national tech-driven recycling management company. He joined Roadrunner via the acquisition of Compology, where he was the Chief Product Officer and co-founder. Compology, he's ranked in the top 5% of B Corp and one of the Fast Company's most innovation companies in 2022. Ben is very passionate about tech, design, business, and how they combine to build products and services for a sustainable world. Prior to co-founding Compology, he was briefly on the Adidas innovation team. I'm looking down here, who's got their kicks on? Not the front row, okay. Ben grew up in Assini, New York, and currently lives in San Francisco. He holds a BSc in mechanical engineering from U of M, was a CFE student of someone in particular on this stage. He was a peer advisor and very active in TEDx UM. Do I have any TEDxers out here? Not one? Ben, you're it. You're going to have to hype TEDx because that's coming up too. Would everyone give a warm welcome, round of applause to Ben Chehebar. Thank you.
Everybody, see you in a bit.
And they gave you a clicker, so you don't have to say Mitchell, next slide, like I did,
perfect.
right? It's
perfect.
all you.
How are we doing? So you guys went out last night? Sounds like it by that response. Well, thank you for the warm introduction, Christine and Kurt. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for coming to class on a Friday. It's also freezing out, so I know it's extra hard to get here today. And I just came in from San Francisco, and I got here, and I'm pretty unprepared for the weather, honestly. Yeah, cool. So it's good to be back. As Christine said, so I was a student here about 10 years ago. I took this class 10 years ago, so it used to be actually in Chrysler or Pierpont or something like that. I studied at the Dude. I got coffee at Mujo. I ate way too much Panda Express, like we all do. Anyway, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. Let's do like a little warm-up maybe for a second and just get to know everybody in the crowd. So show of hands, who here is studying engineering? Okay, literally everybody. How about business school? We got like one, all right. What other majors are people studying?
School of information.
Nice, okay. Anybody else? What did you say? LSA, awesome, okay. Great, hell yeah, all right. Got a good mix. What about, all right, who here is a freshman? Okay, how about sophomores? Juniors? And let's see if seniors show up to class. Okay, good, awesome. So let me just give a little bit of an agenda for today, because I know it's like helpful for people to hear where this class is going. So first of all, I want to do just a quick pitch on my company Compology that I was working on for about 10 years and my journey. I want to tell two quick anecdotes that touch on the two themes of today, which are experimentation and create your own luck. And then Kurt and I will sit down, do a little Q&A, and then I hope that we've got enough time to get some questions from you all, from the audience. All right? Sound good? All right. If you were to put together a startup pitch, what are the key slides that would need to be included? Just shout them out. What do you guys got? What do you say? Okay. Solution to problem, that's a good one. Team, okay. Product market fit, that's awesome. All right, one more and then I'll get started. What do you say? Yeah, okay. Great, so I'm actually going to try to do it in 4 slides and keep it really short today. I'm just going to talk about the problem, the solution, obviously, our customers, and then our impact. All right? We'll knock this out. So problem, $14 billion and 117 million tons of CO2 are wasted every year because garbage trucks pick up dumpsters when they're less than half full, right? So we've got garbage trucks driving all around our country that are going to dumpsters and picking up them, which are half full of air. It's crazy. So what my company does, what Compology does, is something called waste metering, okay? And think of the way that we meter our electricity, our gas, our water. We do that for waste, and that's why we call it waste metering. And how we do it is we put a rugged camera, which I brought one on stage with me. So just take it, pass it around. Hopefully it'll find its way back to me. So we put these cameras inside of dumpsters. So think of like the metal box where trash gets thrown behind ricks, for example, okay? And we take pictures of the inside of the dumpster, and we analyze them for fullness. So how full is the container? We analyze it for contamination. So like what material is in that dumpster that shouldn't be there. We do that using machine learning. And then we take all these data points and we do a couple things for our customers. So one is we help reduce their costs by reducing the frequency that their dumpster actually needs to be collected. We increase their recycling rates. So by pulling out all the contamination, we have a better quality recycling stream. And we end up sending a lot less to landfills, which is a huge, huge benefit. And then the third thing is really around sustainability. And so what we can do is our data can be used in real time to generate reports of the CO2 emissions from their waste and recycling programs. And a lot of our customers use this for ESG disclosures or regulatory filings to show how sustainable they are. So we have about 50,000 cameras across the US, Canada, and Mexico. And we typically work with big brands that have large portfolios of locations. So you might have thought that we work with the haulers, and that's actually something we experimented with early on. But really, our business took off when we started focusing on brands. So we work with Taco Bell, Wendy's, McDonald's, more in the food service space. We work with JLL, CBRE, Cushman & Wakefield, that's more real estate. And we also work with a lot of tech companies that have a lot of campuses around the US, like Apple and Google. And what we're able to do for them, so this is like the impact, is we can reduce their costs by about 30%, and then reduce their CO2 emissions related to their waste and recycling programs by about 70%. All right? And that is just from taking trucks off the road, driving to dumpsters they don't need to be, as well as cleaning up their recycling stream and sending less to landfills. And there's like a couple stats on there, but as an example, at Google, a single dumpster, we can save them about a couple $1,000s per year. And they've got hundreds of dumpsters across the US. So really, really big impact, both operationally and on the sustainability side by using our product. So that was my pitch, 4 slides. And I want to play a short video that our marketing team put together just to tie it all together. It's like 3 minutes, but I think it'll be fun.
If you oversee waste and recycling for a Fortune 500 company, a franchise, or a commercial property, then you likely know the frustrations of overpaying for waste, getting fined for contamination in your recycling, and having no real oversight over your waste vendors or if they're missing scheduled pickups. Other utility services like gas, water, and electricity have been metered for decades, so why hasn't waste? Well, it's time we introduced you to waste metering technology. With Compology, you'll be able to see inside your dumpsters from anywhere. And with complete oversight, you can cut waste costs by 30% and meet your zero waste goals. So how does it work? Well, smart dumpster cameras take images inside your dumpsters 3 times a day and at every pickup. Artificial intelligence then processes those images to deliver 4 main data points: where a dumpster is located, if and when a dumpster is serviced, how full it is at pickup, how full a dumpster is currently, and how fullness trends over time, and how much and what type of contamination is present. Compology not only automatically tags and logs contamination anytime unwanted material is identified in your recycling dumpsters, but also sends a text or email alert to anyone who needs it. You can also get alerted when teams aren't breaking down cardboard boxes and disposing of them properly. Now imagine you have this type of remote visibility and oversight across dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of dumpsters. Here's the impact you can have with that level of data. First, verify if you're getting the service you're paying for. Our data shows the national average for missed pickups is 10%. In this example, this company can see nearly 13% of pickups they're paying for aren't happening. They can now use this data to take action on a daily basis to receive credits for missed pickups or to solve billing disputes. Next, our AI lets you continuously and automatically right-size your service levels to align with your actual waste output. This is where real savings take hold, with most companies seeing service costs reduced by 30%. And with fewer service stops needed, you're not only being efficient, but also driving sustainability by reducing truck miles traveled and carbon emissions. Now imagine the environmental impact as this adds up over time and across all your locations. You'll also be able to improve recycling rates in support of your company's zero waste and diversion goals, and also be able to analyze contamination trends over time to identify shortcomings, educate teams, and improve recycling behavior. And lastly, you can finally provide accurate waste and diversion metrics for annual sustainability and CSR reports that are based on actual fullness levels rather than estimations. To learn more about waste metering technology or how to integrate to your current software through our API, contact sales@compology.com.
So that was the pitch, and so first lesson, I guess, for today was around experimentation, right? That was one of the themes. And that pitch, that video, that was essentially 10 years in the making, right? We started the company in 2012, and it's taken 10 years of experimenting, iterating, honing our messaging. And we used to joke that we pivoted so much that we were just going in circles, right? So what I wanted to do, and to prove that, is I want to show you our pitch from 2012 and how different our idea was, how different the company we thought we were going to build was. So let me click to the next slide. Okay, just pause it for a second. This is, I'm on the right, my co-founder Jason is on the left. He does not usually have a mustache, but this was November 2012. It was Movember, so he was doing it for a good cause. The video was taken in some dark basement, it doesn't look really good. I kind of look like I've been living in that dark basement. So already, we're not off to a good start, but let me play this for you, and you guys can see what we were doing.
Hi, I'm Jason.
I'm Ben. We're Compology, and we're building an urban composting startup.
Ben and I are both engineers who are interested in sustainability, and we also happen to be very interested in food. Our passion for food helped us realize that a lot of it was being wasted by businesses.
Yeah, so for instance, last year, 33 million tons of food waste ended up in landfills. And this food waste can actually be recycled into compost, which can be sold as a fertilizer. So we did a little more research into the problem, and we found that food waste recycling hasn't become mainstream really because it's too costly to implement. And it's too costly because the supply chain is really inefficient.
Our goal is to condense the supply chain of food waste recycling to reduce the cost and make it more accessible. To explain a little bit more about our business model, we're going to go to an example on the whiteboard. Currently, Some businesses in New York City implement a traditional food waste collection model. This model uses multiple collection trucks to pick up waste and drive it up to 250 miles to rural centralized composting facilities in Virginia, where it spends 6 months decomposing. When green roofs, gardens, and urban farms need compost, the finished product is loaded onto trucks and driven back to the city for distribution. This method of food waste recycling is inefficient because of its high cost, pollution, and intense government regulation. Compology takes a fresh approach to food waste recycling by condensing its collection, processing, and distribution into the community in which the waste is generated, eliminating the need for extensive transportation and centralized rural facilities. We're putting composting units, which use our proprietary technology, on site at each food business. Our composting process can reduce the weight and volume of the food waste by half in about a month, cutting the need for as many trucks. Compology's process is efficient because we reduce costs on our end, which allows us to pass savings on to the customer. We drive fewer miles, which means less pollution, and we only transport finished compost, which drastically decreases regulatory oversight. And that's Compology in a nutshell.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Yeah, I actually haven't watched this video in a while, and like, it is kind of embarrassing, right? But I think the point I'm trying to demonstrate here is that where you start will be very different than where you end up, okay? And I think one of the most important lessons I learned is that you should really just think of your initial idea. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect, but the initial idea is just simply a hypothesis that you're going out to the market to test, to figure out who are my customers, what is my business model, what is the product or solution, right? And so that is really what experimentation is all about. Most likely, there should be the expectation that you look back on your original pitch and you say that was really stupid, but that's okay, okay? So next theme.
Hi, I'm Jason.
Not again.
I'm Ben. We're
Not again. Mitchell, could you go to the next? Thanks. I think we're going to burn this video now. But. OK, so create your own luck. I want to tell a little bit of a story here. So let's go back 10 years. All right. I'm a student at Michigan. I'm a peer advisor at the Center for Entrepreneurship. I have beautiful hair. And we were doing this competition called 1,000 Pitches. OK. The Center for Entrepreneurship was. And we were soliciting pitches from all over the university, trying to get 1,000 of them, to promote ideas and startups and all of that. So we're at the awards ceremony where they're going to crown the top pitch of these, I think, thousands of pitches we ultimately collected. And Dr. Zerbukin, who was the founder of the Center for Entrepreneurship, and you actually might know this name because he was recently the associate administrator for NASA and oversaw the entire James Webb telescope program. So pretty incredible guy, incredible program. But anyway, he's on stage, and he's giving his introductory remarks. And he starts by saying, OK, somebody from the audience stand up and give a 5 to 10 second pitch on the business that you're working on right now. OK? So I want to try that right now in today's world. Can someone from the audience just stand up and give me a 5 to 10 second pitch on the business that you're working on? And tell me your name, too.
William, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Roommate pairings at Michigan are horrible. 20% of people rate their roommates 3 out of 10 or less, which is 450,000 worldwide if those numbers are correct. So we're developing data-driven roommate pairing software to fix that.
Amazing. Guys, give me a hand of applause. I honestly thought I was going to have to wait around a little bit to get a response. So thank you so much for standing up, William. So let's go back to 10 years ago. And after Dr. Z asked someone to stand up, literally nobody moved. Okay, there were hundreds of students in the audience. Nobody moved. Everybody's looking at each other, trying to figure out like who's actually going to stand up. I was one of those audience members. 10 technically this was my boss on stage because I was a peer advisor, and I felt bad. So like something, I swear, something in my body just compelled me to stand up, all right? And my heart was racing, I was nervous, I think I had a wedgie, you just kind of like stand up sometimes. And I gave my pitch. It was, I think at the time I was working on a performance-enhancing soccer cleat. I think that's literally all I said. I didn't go into the detail of like the market and the problem and all of that. And I just sat the hell down as quickly as possible, okay? So then Dr. Z looks at me and goes, you won $1,000. And honestly, I was stunned, right? I didn't plan this. I felt bad because I work for him, so maybe some like insider trading or something. And the audience was stunned, and everybody's looking around, and you probably can guess what they're thinking. Said, shit, I should have stood up, right? I should have pitched my business. So, William, you just won $1,000, okay? Come see me after class, and we'll Venmo or something. But look, this was a huge lesson for me, and I hope it is for all of you, that you need to seize every opportunity you have to pitch your business, to put yourself out there, because you don't know what luck's going to come your way, okay? So with that, I'll chat with Kurt now, but thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Ben. $1,000. I think we have a new concept for EHour in the future. We'll do spontaneous pitches, and we'll find a way to fund $10,000 of businesses every week.
I think everybody's on their toes now, too.
Yeah, exactly. Any other pitches?
Well, let's hear it. I might not have any more money, but definitely gonna.
This was not, but I was surprised. 2 students popped right up.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It's on. Hey, Ben, how are you? My name is Ron. Nice to meet you. The project I'm working on is technological water solutions for poverty-stricken areas who don't have water options, typically due to drought, dehydration, deforestation. Right now, my team and I are working on building a dehumidifier adapted with a container system and filtration system to help areas in the world where they can't afford it, tying it up with a solution that's charitable.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for second place, you get steak knives. It's a Glengarry Glen Ross reference for those of you who are familiar with the play. Yeah, thanks for being here. This is so much fun. Closing the loop. We met 12 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And just been amazing to see your journey. I love the tales of the entrepreneurial journey, and I'm fascinated. As rough as your initial pitch was, it was a compelling idea with a value prop that made sense. It was going to save a lot of people a lot of money. It was going to do great things for the environment. Can you talk about kind of the learnings that helped you understand it was time to pivot away from that?
Yeah, it's funny. Like every pitch sounds great until you get into the real world. Right. I think that's the big learning. So I think we had a lot of conversations before we made that original pitch for Compology, but then we actually started to talk to potential customers, and you kind of always have your ask, which is, okay, well, how much will you pay for it? And the big learning there was that the original product was focused on restaurants. So restaurants were going to have to pay for this device that sat behind their business to compost their food waste. And they just said, no, we're not doing that. So that was the learning. But part of that process was when we talked to restaurants or potential customers, they said, no, like that's kind of stupid. I wouldn't pay for that. But my hauler is missing my pickups, and could you just tell me when it's time to get picked up and when it has been picked up and all of that? And that was like the initial kernel of an idea that we started pulling the thread on that eventually led to what is now Compology. Right. Yeah.
That's great. One of our presenters last semester talked about this premise that every startup goes through between 2 and 5 near-death experiences. Do you have any near-death stories?
Yeah, I've got a lot of them. I think there were probably at least 2 times, like when we were actually like fundraising, that I'd have these late night calls with my co-founder, and we'd say, all right, if the investor pulls out, what are we doing tomorrow, right? And it was very, very scary of thinking about, can you make payroll the next day? Because if this investor pulls out, your runway is going to be weeks, not years. So we had a lot of them. And I think actually that just makes me think, like, one of the really difficult parts of entrepreneurship is this like compartmentalization, where like I'm having these conversations with my co-founder about potentially shutting down the business because we're, we don't have enough money and the deal is sort of in jeopardy. And then the next day I'm back in the office, I'm doing kickoffs, I'm like amping the team up, and it's a weird place to be, yeah.
Yeah, we talked a couple weeks ago about the duality of being able to present to the world this confidence that you are changing the world while knowing that, it's the feedback from the market that matters, and that's not always good feedback, right?
Yeah, exactly. You gotta roll with it.
Worrying about making payroll and whatever. What surprised you most about the process from start to where you are now?
I guess I'm thinking about things that have been like really tough throughout the journey, and maybe I'll just say two things. So one is the amount of stress that you end up having to endure starting a business is just very extreme. I'll leave it at that. And I don't want to dissuade anybody from starting a business, because looking back, I think it was an extremely rewarding journey. But just the stress that you have to deal with week over week, dealing with shortfalls in capital and your team and all of that. I think that was like a really surprising piece that I probably should have known, but experiencing it firsthand was something completely different. And then I think the other thing is everything just like takes longer than you think it's going to take. I remember we started. You hear all these articles and you read all these articles in TechCrunch, and it's company gets acquired in a year and a half, 2 years, right? So when you start a business, you assume, all right, I'm going to exit in 2 years, and I'll move on to my next thing, right? We did this business for 10 years, and we never had thought we would have been going for that long. And I think that's just the reality of startups. They take a lot longer than you think. Your technology development takes longer. The market takes longer to develop. And you just need to make sure you're in it for the long haul, and you pick something you're super passionate about, not something just to get a quick win and exit in 2 years. So
yeah, the 10-year overnight success, right? I mean,
crazy.
History is written by the victors, and the stories that we have for entrepreneurship are all too often about the quick success, and it's very rarely so, right? There's
the
big slog,
along and
all the pivots. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious about the big pivot. So I throw my phone across the way. What was, you got feedback from your initial customers, they weren't willing to pay for the solution you presented in front of them. They had this other problem of managing their waste. How did you then go and validate that in a way that gave you confidence that was the thing to invest in?
Yeah. So after we ditched the compost idea, that was like kind of number one. We got on this idea of in some way measuring how full a dumpster is and using that to make routing more efficient. And the first market we went after was trying to sell direct to haulers, right? And that makes a lot of sense. That's right, because they're the ones running the trucks. They have the cost to bear. And we thought they would want to be more efficient. What was interesting is we found out that haulers are paid per pickup. So what that means is their most profitable pickup is when the dumpster is completely empty. It's counterintuitive, but their cost is basically getting to the dumpster, but also they have to pay for the disposal of the material inside of it. So the feedback we got was, we're definitely not using this because it's going to actually hurt our revenue. And so this is kind of like, a lot of conversations you have, and we end up talking at like the generator side, which is ultimately where we ended up focusing. And I think at the end of the day, it ends up being like, who's actually going to pay? And can you see that in your metrics, that the velocity of your sales is improving, that maybe the size of the accounts is improving? There's a lot of, that's more like quantitative, and then there's like qualitative you hear it in customers' voices that you're really solving a pain point. It's never perfect, right? You never get a perfect signal that says like, this is absolutely, we're onto something, but you kind of get just enough, and then you fill in the gap with the vision of where you think things should go, and that's how we decided to pivot.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. What's your team superpower?
Honestly, I think we have a lot of fun when we work, and I think that's probably more results of just like, you have to kind of make fun of yourselves when you're in the trash space, And I think fun at work translates to people who are more productive, that build great products. So I think that's kind of where it all started.
And one more question, and then we'll get some questions from the audience here. Talk a lot about the importance of mentors and having people around you to guide you on your way while you and your co-founders are in the blender. Were there people that you had, investors or other board members, that you can point to that made a big difference for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was like sort of somebody at every stage of our company that helped kind of bump us to the next stage. So like when we started, we just needed feedback from anybody. And so we went to, SCORE, like the small business, like government. They didn't really have advice for startups. That's not really what they're built for. It's more like small businesses. But those are our first mentors. We went in every week and chatted with, a retired Deloitte consultant, and that just kept us moving. And then, you meet investors or just advisors who are eager to get involved. And they all in their own little way at the right time, helped us to get to where we got to. So, super important to just, I guess I was saying before, put yourself out there, talk about your company as much as possible, and you'll find people. There's tons of people.
People want to help.
People want to help, exactly.
People want to help, yeah.
I was always surprised that people want to help, but they do. And they don't necessarily want to get paid for it, too, which is amazing.
It's,
we had no money. So.
But it's tough putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
That's great. Can we have some questions from the audience here?
We've got microphones.
You have microphones.
Mitchell, here you go. Thank you, Mitchell.
Oh, that's nicer, actually.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I was just wondering, you kind of mentioned that you worked here at the Center for Entrepreneurship. When you graduated or when you were done with that, did you automatically go into starting a company, or did you work part-time? And I'm just curious about that transition from graduating wanting to have an income to wanting to spend energy on your startup. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a tough decision to make and something I definitely wrestled with. When I came into college, I think the idea I had was that I wanted to be an inventor. I loved building stuff, and I wanted to be an inventor. And I think it was only through a lot of these entrepreneurship classes that it really triggered me to say, well, okay, I understand there's a business side of it too. I need to have a business model that maybe isn't just selling my widget. And when I left college, I knew I wanted to start a business. I wanted to invent something and pair it with a business model and make money. But you're right, when I left college, I wasn't quite ready to jump in. And I spent a year at Adidas, working on their innovation team. And at that point, it was more just timing, where my co-founder had kind of reached a point in his first year of his career and said, I don't love this. I was looking at myself saying, I don't love this. And when you're 23, 24, you don't have a lot to lose, right? It's your salary's kind of shitty already. So what's it if it goes to zero? You don't have kids to support or anything like that. So I think there's no perfect formula for figuring out whether the timing is right or not. It's more of a gut feel. But I think more often than not, just make the jump and don't wait for the perfect time or having complete information. That's maybe my advice.
You talked a little bit about kind of those situations where you compartmentalize and you have your back against the wall. If you could go back and talk to yourself in those situations, what would you tell yourself?
I mean, I guess in hindsight, I'd say something to the effect of it's gonna be all right. But it's also funny because it might not have been. So I think when you work on your first startup, there's just like so much pressure to like the thought of failure is just like always weighing on you, that if you mess this up, then you're never gonna have another shot. So I think with perspective I have now, I'd probably tell myself that, hey, look, it is what it is. You fought like hell, you've worked really hard, and sometimes, just we talked about luck, it's not unluck, but there's unlucky moments as well. And look, you'll pick yourself up and do something else, right? And everything's gonna be okay. Yeah.
What are some things that you, like when you iterated it, what were some experiments that you tried that perhaps failed or tried and succeeded?
Probably we've had a lot of like starts and stops, and maybe it's getting too specific about our product, but we, for a time, put our cameras inside of the big like construction and demolition containers, and we were working direct with the haulers, so the companies that picked up these containers, and it just ended up being a huge nightmare. It's a very different business to be in, construction and demolition. If one of our cameras, which hopefully it's somewhere in the audience, one of our cameras broke, we couldn't find it because these containers are moving around all the time. And what we thought would be like a nice natural extension of our core product, which is focused on generators, ended up being this huge distraction because the product ended up being very different. The operations and logistics end up being very, very different. And so I think that was one of the bigger failures, I would say. And I think ultimately, just like zooming out, the failure was not in focusing, because I think focus is so important. You can easily get distracted, and things are going to distract you way more than you think they're going to.
Well, kind of like a two-part question. I know you mentioned like working with advisors was really important, but how did you like initially like break the ice of getting yourself in a position to even like pitch to a company, whether that was like cold emails or like reaching out to people individually? And like once you're there, how do you like establish credibility with the company to like get like these big companies or corporations to take a chance on like the first, like to be like your first customer, I guess?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like getting your first customers are like the hardest, because you are an unproven college student. In my case, we're in an industry where the average age is probably 50, right? And they're saying things like, oh, you remind me of my son. I'm like, okay, great, are we doing a deal or not? So I think you hit on it, like the way to, by the way, I have no idea where that question came from. Okay. You need to like cold call, cold email. We called it getting in people's faces, which is we literally just show up at a business or at a person's doorstep and just talk to them, because it's a lot harder to turn you away when you're there versus ignoring an email. So I think you just need to hustle like hell. That's how you get in front of people. And you asked about, I guess, credibility. You need to prove yourself, right? Whether you want to or not, you may think, hey, I'm a smart guy, we know what we're doing, just use my product. You need to prove it to people. And so that usually is in the form of piloting your product for free and being very, very hands-on throughout the entire process. Because I think one of the things you'll learn is like those first customers, it's less about the revenue that you're getting from them, right? They're super important to help you iterate, right? To give you feedback to change what you should be doing, because they're your target customer. So you just have to have like white glove concierge service, and that's what's going to earn you credibility and hopefully win you bigger sales down the road.
That's awesome. Any other questions? One more question, and then we'll wrap up. Yeah. Shout it out.
I know you said that you had many iterations on your product, but when you were first starting out, how did you take the lead with this one idea or one area?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like we knew we needed to start somewhere, and I think sort of what I was saying before, which is you're better off not waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect idea, because it's going to change the minute you start talking to customers. So if I recall, we kind of just said, screw it. This sounds good enough. Let's just get started. And it's amazing what momentum can do for you, right? If you say, all right, we've got an idea, we've got a company name, which that's always fun, and we're talking to customers, we're doing something, momentum just puts you in a place where you almost can't stop. Right? You just have to keep going, and you're going to figure it out. So I don't think there was a single reason we decided to jump other than just saying screw it and trusting the process of figuring out what that business would be.
Yeah, bias towards action, right? Doing, and learning, I think, is a recurring theme with all the people you've heard this semester, and we'll talk about one. Time for one last big question. What's the one thing these guys should be doing that they maybe aren't thinking about to prepare themselves for success as they get out into the world?
I feel like one of the big skills or muscles that I've sort of developed through this experience is sales. And sales is like, obviously selling a product if you have it, selling yourself. And I tend to be more like self-deprecating, which I think at times in the business context like isn't great. But I think just like learning how to sell yourself, how to speak confidently, how to like not being ashamed of just like standing up in a crowd and telling people about your business. I think you just need to get over the discomfort of doing that. And I think it makes such an impact in your career.
One of the most important skills you can learn independent of whether you pursue that as a vocation or not, just understanding what sales is. Coincidentally, the CFE is launching its first ever sales course as a short course this semester, taught by probably one of the most outstanding faculty we have. So love to talk about it if you have questions. It's a half semester course this term, and it'll be a full semester next term. So yeah.
Teed that up for you nicely, huh?
Yeah, I can't
How did you know that, Ben?
I'll slip you a 20 later. Everybody, please, a round of applause for Ben. Thank you so much for sharing your journey.
Thank you.